It is free agent season, guys. All of a sudden, we're starting to get a sense of who is going to be available via free agency. Are the Marlins going to make any moves in free agency? Maybe small, maybe big. Who knows? Equally, is there a creative way to move Avisail Garcia and all of his contract for someone else? Tons to get into. This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. It's your daily Marlins podcast. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Miami Marlins _UK. Extra long UK on a Friday for sure. Guys, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. This is your team every day, of course. Have I already said that? Not sure. Nevertheless, there is a YouTube channel as well. Make sure you hit subscribe over there and join the comments. Make sure you are in the comments in YouTube. It is a straight up zoo in the best kind of way. So make sure you do that. Guys, this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections, over 50 infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That is JASE. JaseMedical.com. And not quite Jase, but Jase is in the house. Jase, how we doing, brother?
Doing all right, Pete. It's Friday. We're celebrating the weekend. Work is over. Well, depending on where you are. And it's time to party. Let's go.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. Tons to get into today, mate. The Marlins, are they going to have an off-season party? You know, what's this offseason going to look like for the Fish? Are they going to be making some moves, or is it going to be a little bit quieter in Miami this offseason? What's your general sense?
They need to fill positions. There's about 5 or 6 spots on the roster available right now. We'll see who is protected by the 40-man. It's just exciting. We're in a new era as far as leadership's concerned. What he's plugging into his computers and the numbers, we'll see pretty soon. And then we'll see what moves they can make.
Yeah, for sure. What did you make of the Peter Bendix hire, mate? I mean, you've mentioned it, very analytically driven. Interested to see, like what the spreadsheet looks like. I wonder if that spreadsheet's going to be circulated. You know, who's, to your point before the call, you know, who's going to be in green, who's going to be in amber, who's going to be in red for this roster. But overall impressions of the hire.
It is what you can say the perfect hire. You know the direction this ownership has tried to go with in the last few years. With the payroll going up organically, they need to figure out a way to keep it at a cost level where they feel comfortable. Not saying they're not going to spend, but as it keeps going up, you have to have someone who has been there before. And this guy, like most, didn't know much about Peter Bendix prior to his hiring. I guess you can look at the old videos, and his message with the Rays is similar to the message he's already started with the Marlins.
Yeah.
But I, like you and like most, read the 3 lines about him. He's been with the team or been with the Rays since 2009 through a couple different regimes that just keep trickling down and hiring the next man up. And he seems like the perfect position or perfect hire for the position for us, to be honest with you.
Agreed. I feel like everyone's seeing this in the same way, which for Marlins Twitter is not the usual situation, but it just felt like the perfect hire. I did see maybe like a 90-second clip, something along those lines. John Morosi speaking with him at the GM meetings earlier this week before there's been a big kind of viral outbreak, whatever it might have been. But, you know, one of the things that stood out to me in that one, you know, where John Morosi's, you know, asking him what's exciting you most. The thing that excites him most that he called out was the pitching. He said, listen, you can't have enough arms unless the Marlins have got arms. I think it's interesting that even in a Sandy-less situation for 24, he's still calling out the pitching is what excites him most. That may be because the offense isn't amazing either, but we'll cover that. But do you see the pitching the same way, that's still the crown jewel for the Marlins at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the pitching is, you know, it's the diamond. We have the diamond. we could fill the diamond, let's say, with different pitchers. We had a lot of injuries in the last couple years, but at least in the minors, as far as next man up there. But those injuries, those surgeries are now being healed. Everyone's in physical therapy. My dog agrees.
Absolutely.
It's about 4:00 here, Pete, on a Friday. That's his walk time. So we're kind of into that, but that's fine. No, he's filling the positions or the pitcher's position is backfilled. And now that guys are coming off shoulder surgery, they have the Max Mayer coming up. You hope that Eddie Cabrera turns a new leaf. You hope that Trevor Rogers comes back as far as his back injury and his shoulder injury and this injury and that. And he can come back to his 21 form. I'm going to pause there and let you speak. Sorry about that. Give me 30 seconds.
You've got it. You've got it. I've got you covered, mate. This is why I don't have any pets, by the way, for those listening as well. No pets here.
But you have to have most of them. Like, look at this guy if you're watching on camera. He just wants attention. Thinks I'm talking to myself over here. We have a plethora of pitching, right? And we need it. That's been the strength of this organization. Under the previous leadership, she tried her best to take a year or two to fill a different need, right? With Jacob Berry, with Watson, and some other players in those drafts, whether it be the catcher and whatnot. But they went back to the strength of this system last year and getting Noble Meyer. So in reality, there is a lot of pitching depth, even with the loss of the one that we traded for Jake Berger at the end of
Jake Eater.
Jake Eater. So
absolutely. You're right. Those names you're calling out there in Max Meyer, in Eddie Cabrera, obviously, in Trevor Rogers. There still remains plenty of talent there from a pitching perspective. And, what we shouldn't forget as well is some of the talent in the bullpen as well. Like there's some real studs in that pen that emerged, Tanner Scott being like the most obvious one. But, one of the things that will be, in Peter Bendix's mind at this point is, how do we deal with 2024 without Sandy? The workhorse, the innings eater, the stud, the ace, whatever phrase. I mean, there's a few others you could throw out there. Takes were made. Definitely got a few that I can't use like that right now. But, how are they going to work around this situation with Sandy? And equally, does anything change in terms of Sandy and the Marlins kind of looking beyond 24 into 25 and where his contract starts to get even more expensive? All relative, like it's still a relatively team-friendly contract, but from a Marlins perspective, it is expensive. So how do you see things playing out in terms of sort the innings and Sandy's time here with the Marlins?
Sandy may have thrown his last pitch as a Miami Marlin.
Oh boy.
If you think about the way Tommy John surgery has gone for most pitchers and players in the last 10 years, how medicine has changed and the comeback is a little bit quicker, as long as there's no issues in between there. Sandy's contract this year was friendly. Like the Marlins had this window of Sandy in a good pricing zone, and that was 2023, 22, 23, 22, he did great. 23, he had an off year and then the injury. And then 24, he's going to be out. 2025, Sandy's contract goes from $9 million, which is being spent and not being used, you can say, in 24, but it's going to $17 million. There has not been a Marlin on record making $17 million to throw a pitch on a regular season. And there's not been a pitcher in the Rays organization to throw a pitch for $17 million. If you look at how the Rays worked in the past, I mean, they did sign Zach Eflin, and I'm going to bring a little Rays into this because that's the leadership we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Zach Eflin signed the largest Rays contract for $13.3 million for, I think, 4 or 5 years. Now you got Sandy going at 17. He's a trade piece at this point, and I hate that, right? He's your ace. You love him, but that's why they do back paid contracts. You saw it with Stanton with the old ownership, and you're seeing it now.
Wow.
I don't see Sandy pitching for the Marlins again as much as I'd love him to. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but as a realist, $17 million when you have all that pitching. You have to pay Luzardo eventually. You have to pay Brax. I wouldn't trade Brax after the season he just had. You have Eddie Cabrera, further mentioned, and you have a young Yuri Perez who is supposed to be a better Sandy at age 20 years old. You got this guy for another 7 years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I can understand. I know where you're coming from on that topic specifically, that clearly we're not going to see any return on the 9 mil. You've then got 2 17s after that, and then a club option of 21. So there's potentially three seasons of Sandy on the mound control anyway. But all of them are at the more expensive end. The question is, do the Marlins maybe look to trade Sandy Alcantara within that window to cut some payroll, as you already mentioned? This is the problem with these teams that are in the kind of draft develop. They organically get more expensive over time, right? That's the point that you made, where, year on year, these guys are getting more and more expensive, but your budget level, your payroll level is maybe fixed at a certain point. And so that drives situations where you have to make decisions. Me and Sean spoke about it a few weeks back, thinking about looking to 2025 and the fact you've got Luis Arias, maybe at circa 20 million for Luis Arias. You've got Sandy Alcantara at 17. You've got Avisail Garcia's money potentially at 12 still on the books. That's 3 players for nigh on 50, 60 million? That's unsustainable for the fish, so something has to give. Avi may not be movable. So one of the other two has to be moved.
Yeah. The roster's organically going up as players enter arbitration. I mean, we'll possibly talk about that later in this episode of who we're going to extend or not extend. Yep. But as the players organically go up, those top of the payroll guys, you got to make it or break it. And if you have a plethora of pitching ready to go that can be compatible to a Sandy as you're competing, look, you want your ace there, but he's the first one to go. And you think about what he can bring back, it's there for them. So we'll see how that works out.
All right, well, it's ad time, so I'll let you sort the dogs while I cover the ads. And it's our good friends over at Jase Medical. Yes, sir. And guys, listen, you got to be all in on this Jase Medical situation. We spend a lot of time talking together. You and I, we get fired up together on wins and losses and trades, you name it. But I'm thankful for that connection we have. And today I want our chat to be a little bit more personal. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications. You realize what that means? Bring on extended travel. Bring on the next natural disaster or supply chain issue. You are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your Viagra prescription. Oh, no. This is possible because of our friends at Jase Medical. It isn't just Viagra, by the way, guys. Go online right now at jasemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. Sounds amazing, right? A verified customer had this to say about Jase. I'm thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered antibiotic kits. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you love would like to get peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use the promo code, and that code is locked on for $20 off your purchase. All right, guys, you are here with me, Peter Pratt, and Chase Blake on Friday, the 10th of November. We are considering off-season moves. We're considering the direction. We're considering trades that maybe need to be made. But equally, we're thinking about extensions. This is where we start to consider how the Marlins, with maybe some of their arbitration, early arb, late arb guys, how they can maybe consider a better way of cost controlling them moving forwards. The Marlins have a sizable class. The Rays have a huge class of arbitration guys. The Rays, me and Eli were speaking on Wednesday's episode, the fact that the Rays haven't been shy from extending guys. It isn't like they don't offer extensions, and I think that will continue. If the extension makes sense, they will make it happen. So the question is, Chase, with all these guys that are in this arbitration window, that includes Tanner Scott, Jesus Luzardo, Jazz Chisholm, Trevor Rogers, Jesus Sanchez, Luis Arias, if the Marlins are going to look to do something creative extension-wise this offseason, where do you see them allocating that time, effort, and effectively financial resource, if anyone?
If you go back to last season, they avoided arbitration with most of the players. That was their goal. You have to think it's going to happen again. Look at Birdie. Birdie's making 3.5, I believe, or 3.2, somewhere in that range. And that's a steal for a super utility like him. And that was done last season.
Yeah,
After
it was a good deal.
He was your bases stealing champion the year prior. Stolen base champion. Look, they need a core and do something in South Florida that's never been done before and secure that core. You think about back to when Christian Yelich signed a long-term deal that was originally offered. It's funny. It was originally offered to Ozuna. Ozuna turned it down, and Christian Yelich, they shared an agent. Yelich's agent said, this is behind-the-scenes stuff. Yelich's agent said, hey, he'll take that money instead. And they signed Yelich, and then they signed Stanton. And so they had sort of a core, a couple other players in there. They have that opportunity to do that now. You could get Jazz Chisholm Jr. for pretty cheap right now, as far as an extension is concerned. He has, although when he's on the field, he performs. We love Jazz. If you can extend him now for $4 to $5 million a year, start it off low, a couple million, raise it up over time to the highest it can go, like $6-7 million on a 6-year deal, 5-year deal, that's a steal. You have to allocate that money to Arise. Arise is your franchise right now. He is the face of your franchise in the major leagues. He's what the players really, or the fans really wanted Jazz to be. But he's your all-star. He's the guy winning the in-season batting champion awards. And that makes money for the team. So I think he made $7 million last year, 6 or 7. That's going to skyrocket to 9 to 12 this year after the performance he had for arbitration. If they can lock him in on a 4-year deal somewhere in the $8 million range, again, just spitballing numbers here, that's a steal for the Marlins. You lose Jorge Soler. Many people are angry, like yourself, about the qualified offer not offered. If he accepted that, the team would not have money to spend next year. So I'm kind of on the side as I get why they didn't, as more than why they didn't, as opposed to why didn't they offer it. So I'm okay with Soler leaving. I think Josh Bell opting in gives you a chance to work something out with him. And depending on how this season goes, if we're winning come the deadline again or around playoff contention, what if they don't trade him? What if they get him to sign some sort of 2-year extension around the same cost point, just a little bit less, maybe a 3-year deal as he gets older into his 36, 37 range? Or you flip him. You mentioned that yesterday. You flip Josh Bell. That opt-in means so much for this team. It sends a message to free agents. This is a good team to play for. Because he's made a bunch of friends in San Diego, a bunch of friends in Washington, Pittsburgh. He's a well-respected player in the league. By him opting in, it says, hey, free agents, this is a place to be. The culture is different here. But as far as extensions, Arise, you need to extend. Jazz, you can get for pretty inexpensive as opposed to him performing for a full season. Tanner Scott, I love Tanner, but he has to play like he did for a full season for me to get behind him, because it's kind of like the Kim Ng thing for me. She had a great season. He had a great season. But if you go back to 2022,
not
he
so
didn't
much,
perform so well.
No.
And you have Andrew Nardi, and that man, huevos of steel, that young man.
No, baby.
He's going to be a force to reckon with, and he's inexpensive, and he's going to remain inexpensive for a couple years here. And then you got a couple other pieces in the bullpen. You got to get you got to get Jesus Luzardo under a contract. Not as much as Sandy is, but you get him in earlier than you did Sandy, and you get him to sign something hometown team friendly. I think he would. I think he likes it here. Gets to perform in front of his dad and parents.
Yeah, agreed.
At least twice in a 9-game homestand. And then you have the young pitchers who are minimum, if that, for the next couple years. So you still have a window here to build a core. Long-winded answer for you. My bad.
No. The thing is, they can go so many different directions in that topic area, so it doesn't surprise me that you end up with a long answer. The interesting thing for me, because Josh Bell, so what we saw with Soler, you called out, the Marlins made their decision. It is what it is. We won't dwell on that any longer. There's no need to. Josh Bell, though, is a different situation where the Marlins had no say in that. It was purely Josh Bell. And Josh Bell decided to opt in to that $16.5 million. The question I've got is whether the Marlins actually wanted him to opt in for $16.5. Because when you think about that, that's a big number for the Marlins, generally. Equally, you have to wonder and consider, what was the future looking like for Luis Arias and first base in general? At first base, you've got a situation where Troy Johnston should be given an opportunity. We'll see how he handles that opportunity. You've then got Xavier Edwards that also deserves an opportunity. The problem is he's basically the same guy as Luis Arias. So the question then becomes, okay, do we actually need Josh Bell? Could we make it work with Troy Johnston, with Xavier Edwards and Luis Arias? Next thing is you're $16.5 million saved. So the question I'm thinking about now in this early part of the offseason is, Josh Bell may have opted in, but are the Marlins actually going to opt out of him and look to move him this offseason? I think that is something to watch. I'm a big fan of Josh Bell, and I love the balance he brings to this roster, personally. So I am not advocating that. But if the Marlins have a budget challenge, you go straight to your top earners. Start there. Josh Bell, top earner. So that's where you start. He's movable because he adds value. Unfortunately, Avisail Garcia, second top earner, he is immovable at this point. But I do wonder a rental Josh Bell for $16.5 million, someone that maybe the Marlins could do without, potentially, depending on what Troy Johnson does, but depending on how they feel about Xavier Edwards. So that's kind of in the back of my mind here with Josh Bell.
I look at it a little differently. With the loss of Gene Segura, that kind of, what was he making, $7 million or somewhere like that, 6 or 7?
7 or 8 or something, yeah. Let me check it out.
Let's say it's 7, good number there. That leaves the Josh Bell difference at $9 million. You would, if let's say Cooper was still in arbitration, I think he made around 7 last year.
Yeah, he was. By the way, Gene Segura was due $8.5 million in 24.
So that even better. So now you're at 7.5 difference, right? If Cooper was making around that same number last year, you're not really paying Josh Bell 16.5 if you take that money out. So they planned for that. And you would have had to pay a first baseman, a good, decent first baseman who could play 150 games. I'm not saying Troy Johnston can't, but he's not proven. You would have had to pay a first baseman somewhere there to bring them in anyway. So if you offset the numbers, it's a steal for the Marlins for him to opt in. And
I'm with you. That was my thinking too around that one, by the way. Like, you have to factor in Gene Segura's dead money into the Josh Bell number. That was otherwise you had a sunk cost of Gene Segura on there too, as well as Avisail Garcia. So you end up with $20 million of sunk costs. They've actually managed to flip $8 million, 8.5 of it into something usable. So, they have to be applauded for that. And I'm interested to see if they can do anything creative with Avisail Garcia, frankly. He's owed $24 million more, guaranteed. I loosely jokingly put out there that, the Phillies are maybe looking to move Nick Castellanos, right? 3 remaining years at $20 million, $60 million for Nick Castellanos. If the Phils are looking to move on him, and the question has to be with Castellanos, by the way, why are the Phils looking to move Castellanos? There's a reason the Phils are looking to do that. It's because they're looking to reallocate the funds elsewhere for another player. And that player or players are Juan Soto or Shohei Ohtani. That's what's in the Phil's mind, in my opinion.
You're missing Mike Trout in that conversation, too.
And Trout, absolutely. Trout. Yeah, that's another interesting one. A big ticket item. That's what they're thinking. And so they need to move the money. That then gets interesting where, like, could the Marlins maybe swap a bit of money? Don't know. I don't know. This probably not. Like, clearly, I'm not saying that Avisail Garcia 1-for-1 for Castellanos is an amazing trade for the Phils. But when you factor in the money and what they're trying to do maybe to fill that spot with either Juan Soto, Mike Trout, or Shohei Ohtani, perhaps. I mean, if that means if they have to take on Avisail Garcia to get Soto, I think they'd take it, the Phils, and be happy with it, frankly. So
I agree, but I'd see them going straight out and trying to trade for Soto and give up Castellanos in that trade to give that money.
Makes more sense.
San Diego.
Makes more sense. I'm just trying to find a way to move Avi.
Yeah, I know. I just don't see it there. And the Marlins weren't high on him, or else they would have signed him to a home discount a few years ago. Based on his average, maybe just a little bit over defense, or even a little bit under at some points. Castellanos, I think that was the red flag on him, was his defense. He came through and hitting in the playoffs for them, except everyone fell off in game 6 and 7. But he had an okay season. I think maybe underperformed a little bit for what they expect. It's nice to think they could do something offsetting. Hopefully, Bendix could find some move here to get that contract out of here. But if it's not out of here, Avisail Garcia is not going to be paid $15 million to sit on the bench. I see him as an opening day starter in right field if he's still on this team, and I hate that. I know you can't sit $15 million when that's quarter of your payroll, not a quarter, but you get it. Quarter of your highest paid guys on your payroll. You can't have that on the bench. And that's how the Marlins saw it last season. Maybe they follow that same path. If they can't, if they were going to release him, they would have already done it, right? There's no reason to wait. So I don't see them releasing him. Hopefully they could trade him. But
the reality is you got a new front office now, and they're extremely cost conscious. And so no snap reactions will be made. To your point, Avisail Garcia remains with the Marlins at this point. A decision has not been made. And I spoke about this maybe a few weeks back, thinking about the reality is you give Avi another chance at this point. If you were absolutely done and happy to eat the dough, you would have done it. You would have done it last year, because actually it looked like they were done with him last year, and he was just, glorified cheerleader. If they were going to do it, they would have done it. They're not doing it. They're either looking to move the dough and swap and get something else back and maybe try to, see value in that, or he's going to be on the roster and he's going to be given another chance. And hopefully he has a Marcell Ozuna type, renaissance and wins a Silver Slugger in right field. I mean, wouldn't that be something if Avi finds it? But, Avi's going to be given, I think, an opportunity unless they can find a taker, which is worrying. But they do need a righty stick to platoon with Jesus Sanchez. Like, that's a given. Like, Jesus Sanchez cannot be hitting any left-handed pitching. So they're going to need a righty outfielder for certain.
What if it's the guy you just mentioned? The Braves hate that their payroll is so high. The Braves love playing with the above average spend, but not as much as they're spending now, not being in the top 7 or 8 payrolls in the league.
Yeah.
What if Ozuna, who showed some worth there and could get them something back in some way, shape, or form, is a Marlin next year? That's another debate for another discussion, but that seemed they had the rumors came out they were having those discussions last season or the year before. Why not open them back up, see if you can get value out of it?
Yeah, well, the money matches up. The money does sink on Ozuna in many ways. He's owed 16 this year. There's a club option of 16 the year after that. So I think there's $1 million buyout. So it's not a direct money swap, but it's close. It's close with him and Avi. And I mean, to your point, those rumors were circulating a few deadlines ago around the Braves were engaging the Marlins, looking to move Ozuna at the time, his way overvalued contract, and his off-the-field issues for Avisail Garcia, in a view that we think we can fix Avi and get him back to what he can do, and they can realize value. So, listen, Peter Bendix will find a way. He'll find a way to do something creative, and it's going to be a statement move, I think. But for me, I think this offseason we are entering into the serious unknown. I know last offseason, before it even got started, I had like a real crystal clear view of where I thought the Marlins were going to go. I knew they were going to move Pablito for someone, a stick it was just so obvious, the pieces. I'm looking at this offseason, and frankly, I know what the holes are. And to your point, they have multiple holes, and it's obvious where they are. But how they fill them, I have no idea of what direction that's going to take. Jase, how excited are you feeling about this offseason? And just generally looking at 24, how are you feeling about the Marlins just generally heading into 24?
I don't see the Marlins making the playoffs again. I see them competing. They weren't supposed to make the playoffs this year. It was fun. I'm not trying to bash them or anything, but a couple, and I've said this on a few spaces recently, not on video, so this is recorded on video. A few more bounces, or not bounces, but pitchers, relief pitchers throwing the baseball to first base. And we're not even sniffing the playoffs. We're trying to be a 500 baseball team at that point. Maybe 79, 78 wins. The other teams handed us wins.
The voodoo, baby.
I could see the positivity keeping up. One thing to think about also is the fans. They put on a winning team last season, and it didn't really affect the attendance later in the season. Everyone's saying, oh, let's get Ohtani, fans will show up. Oh, let's spend the big bucks. No, because big bucks doesn't mean winning. We had a winning baseball team, and the fans did not come out. And I'm not talking Broward County. I'm not talking Palm Beach. The only way this team is going to be successful, the only way they're going to keep Sandy Alcantara on this team for $17 million, if Miami shows up, Miami fan base shows up, all the Twitter heads who are bashing the team, or ex-heads who bash the team for every move they make, bashing the ownership, the guy's cheap. He has spent more money every year since purchasing this team. He had a original fire sale, but all he's done is inject positivity, try to move the team forward in many different ways, whether it was hiring Kim, her success, into now having another direction which has proven to work of being successful. He is making all the right moves. He is saying all the right things.
Yep.
The fans need to come out and stop having the ex-girlfriend syndrome or ex-boyfriend syndrome. You can't keep blaming this owner for Jeffrey Loria. It's not his fault that the stadium is where it is. It's not his fault that we had 17 or 16 years of sad baseball out here, or not winning baseball. This guy has won the playoffs, or gotten your team into the playoffs, 2 of the last 4 seasons. That is something that's never happened. You could say you waited 20 years for an actual playoffs, but that's not what it was.
Yeah.
And he's doing it the right way.
Yeah.
The only way this team gets the free agents, spends the money, is if we show up. And by we, I mean those in Miami who are around the stadium that don't have to drive 2 hours on a work day to get there and 2 hours home.
Yeah.
With that being said, I see the team competing. I see a step up for some of these pitchers. I'm excited. I'm excited to see Max Mayer see how he comes out. I'm excited to see Xavier Edwards. He could be your shortstop. He could be your second baseman, depending on how they organize the roster, which, we went into last season having second baseman playing third, having a utility as your starting short, having your all-star second baseman in center field, having Cooper was your first baseman. I mean, for a lot of last season, you had your best reliever in some parts was your catcher coming in blowout games, right? Jacob Stallings. So this year we have a plan, and we have pieces who you can try out to fill the needs. Tim Anderson's a huge name. You said it, you and I are on the same page in some ways. And I'm sorry for making this go over a little bit to those listening. Hope you're enjoying.
It's Friday.
Yep, it is Friday. So when you said yesterday, the first person that they need to speak with about Tim Anderson is Jake Berger. And that's so true because you can get the real feel for the guy. And Jake Berger will say, yeah, he can fit or not fit in here. I like Rosario, to be honest. They are going to get a free agent. But what if the Padres, again, going back to them, they have Kim out there just waiting to play shortstop for the Miami Marlins. And if they can make a move somewhere like that, they took a $50 million loan, take it for what it is. I mean, that's not a norm in baseball.
No.
So we'll see.
Someone's up there, right?
There. Exactly. But I'm positive about next year. I'm more positive about next year than I was coming into this year. And that said, we could be a 500 baseball team. And that's the Braves have shown year over year. Yes, they won the division. The Tampa Bay Rays have shown you just have to be a successful organization and get in the playoffs or be around the playoffs. And that's something sustained we've never had down in South Florida. Not the year we won the World Series in 97, when it was a paid-for year, when you brought in all those stars. Not in 03, although we did have a sustainable team for 3, 4, 5, and then until they really traded Miggy in 6. But that was the last time you had sustained baseball and a core of players that were good.
Yeah.
Now's a new generation. Now's the time for this generation to show up and support the team and forget about the losing. And really, with the extensions that they have a chance to offer now, it's just an exciting time, right? You know your players. Sure, you're going to have the guy come in and out here and there, but for the bulk of it, you know your lineup. You know you're going to hear Chisholm Jr. or Luis Arise. And I'm so happy to get rid of Joey Wendell and his crappy walk-up music. My gosh, that was a mood killer. But that's the song, not him. Well, just happy he's gone. But it's just an exciting time. I'm excited to see these young guys that are mixing in with the older guys. And I'm saying Jake Berger as an older guy as if he wasn't a rookie last year. I have fans on our Facebook page that go, oh, well, I'm happy Bell opted in. I hope they do the same for Jake Berger. Guys, he's a Marlin for 5 years, man. It's just exciting. And you haven't had a core third baseman, since not even Hanley played. He was a shortstop. Cabrera was a good third baseman for a while. Mike Lowell was the last guy you can honestly say you knew Brian Anderson, I'm not counting here, but Mike Lowell, I want to say, was the last guy who you can rely on to hit home runs from that position. It's an exciting time.
It's Kim Ang's legacy. That's a legacy trade, mate, to be honest with you. I know she's no longer with the organization, but when we look back, we'll fondly remember that move that Kim made. I think the White Sox were vulnerable at that moment, it's fair to say. They remain vulnerable, and Kim spotted that vulnerability, and what a deal that looks like it's going to be long-term as well. That
was her third choice, too. If you think about how those trades went, he was the first one to be announced, but they first wanted Candelario, and that wasn't there. I know they went after the guy in KC. I'm forgetting his name right now, but that was their first choice. It wasn't even mentioned. I mentioned it.
Yeah. I know you're talking about. And then also they went for Justin Turner as well. So
maybe they went fourth choice, but we're happy with it. It worked out in our favor. You just hope he is that, and I have all faith in him. I love him. I love his family. I love their Twitter. He's the only player to put the fire emojis when Josh Bell opted in. So, they're conversing offline.
Those two, they're big buddies. And those guys arriving definitely had a really positive impact on Jazz too, by the way. And I think that's a good thing. It is. And you've mentioned two major key points that I think are really good takeaways from this conversation. One of which, irrespective of how the offseason goes and how things happen in 24, there's a strong, exciting core that the Marlins have built here. So that's a positive. The other thing thus far, I must say as well, is Bruce Sherman, this offseason thus far, in my opinion, is coming out. All of a sudden, people are like, that Bruce Sherman guy, he knows his stuff, actually. It's felt like he's kind of just been like the kind of rich buffoon type almost, like, doesn't really know what's going on and whatever, and he kind of gives off that vibe. But actually, the calls and the decisions that Bruce Sherman seemed to be making, again, Marlins Twitter are going, that makes sense. So for me, Bruce Sherman's really raised his stock as well. And to your point, if he promises something, he's delivering it. And he's making sound decisions. And that's all you can ask for from an owner's perspective. And to your point, yes, there may be budget constraints. And how those are alleviated is by increasing revenue, by more people turning up. That's at the core of it. That's at the core. The Marlins haven't been able to solve it for years, but that is the core.
And I practice what I preach to whomever's listening. I live 2 hours away on a good day with traffic to get there. I'm a Marlins ticket member, right? I don't have a full season plan, but I have a 20-game plan.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy the 20-game plan. The single season tickets are on sale. But show them you care and get off the social media and show up. If you want to boo the team, at least you've earned it by paying them to boo them.
Fair enough, innit?
But you won't need to.
Yeah, for sure. There's no need to boo this core. They're too good. Guys, we're running out of time. We've gone long, but I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a fun one on a Friday. Overall, we're both feeling optimistic about the offseason in some ways. Equally, I haven't quite wrapped my head around exactly how this offseason is going to play out. And that's driven by the fact that Peter Bendix is in the house and he has a different outlook and an approach to Kim. I knew Kim's MO. I could see exactly how she would operate. I'm yet to see what that means from Peter Bendix, but I'm excited to see. Jase is calling out that he's uncertain whether Sandy Alcantara will ever throw a pitch again for the Marlins. Not in baseball, he will return from his injury, but whether that $17 million becomes too expensive for the Marlins and they look to move on from Sandy. Great question. Could the Marlins move Avisail Garcia and his money, free that up? Equally, Josh Bell, he's opted in, but could the Marlins trade him to free up that 16.5? There's so many ways they can go about this. They need to be creative with their payroll. They need to be creative with their moves and their organizational moves. We'll wait to see what that looks like. But thanks for joining us on a Friday, making Locked On Marlins your first listen. I'll be back next week, and fundamentally, we'll start to dig into some of what I believe are the moves that need to be made. We'll look forward to seeing you then.